Yeah, it's absolutely critical, I think. I mean, right now, irrespective of what's going on with the pandemic and the political climate and the protests and all the upheaval that we're seeing, as a culture, we're experiencing an extraordinary poverty of attention and focus. We're so distracted by our devices. We're more anxious and stressed and depressed than we ever have been before. This is not going in a good direction. And to the extent that we can commandeer a little bit more control over these things and understand that we have some level of agency and we can reverse this sort of automatic pattern that we're on of just scrolling endlessly and doing what we're doing that we know is not leading us in a good direction is critical if we're going to find our way forward. And to speak a little bit to what's going on right now, I think, and it's related, and I'm interested in your thoughts on, the neuroscience that is, I think relevant to this, is that we've lost the ability to have civil discourse. There's a real breakdown in communication right now, culturally and socially, and it's fractured our society, and it's not good, right? So what is going on neurologically with human beings that are attaching themselves and so self-identifying with certain narratives that it's polarizing our population and preventing us from being able to just be together or united or agree upon what is true and what is not true and share a value system so that we can see our way through the challenges that we're facing right now, many of which are an existential threat to the future of humanity and the planet.
It's a huge problem. You articulated it beautifully. And I think neuroscience can offer a couple insights into why it's happening and perhaps what we might do about it. So one of the scientific results that I'm very intrigued by is in the 1960s, a guy named Robert Heath recorded from the human brain. These are people, you couldn't do this experiment nowadays, but skull popped off. My neurosurgery friends tell me that's no big deal. Electrodes lowered deep into the brain, all over the brain, and people can stimulate wherever they want. And they just report what they're feeling. So they press one lever, they feel drunk. They press another lever, they feel happy. They press another lever, they feel sexually aroused. And they're reporting all this, right?
When was this done?
In the 1960s, early 1960s. Several times, actually, and published twice, essentially the same data, different populations in the journal Science, which is sort of our Super Bowl, Science and Nature, Cell. Those are the big ones, journals, that is. So the number one brain area that people want to stimulate, they finally hit this lever where they go, oh, I like that. And they just keep hitting that thing and hitting that thing and hitting that thing. Frustration and mild anger. And I saw that result.
That's the choice. I could be drunk, I could be happy, I'm gonna choose frustration and anger.
Exactly.
Wow.
What that told us is it's clearly tapped into the dopamine reward system. It feels like a hit of dopamine to them more than anything else. So we need to put that on the shelf and keep it visible as we kind of march into this a sort of answer to your question. The other thing is an understanding that, and there's some recent data on this that are really impressive, not from my lab, but from another lab, which is that beliefs and information that supports our prior beliefs also increases the activity of these reward systems. So the more I see stuff that verifies what I already think or feel, that they are bad and they are good, or that we are good and they are bad, the more dopamine and adrenaline is released into my system, which we now know from our discussion a few minutes ago, changes the way I view the world. It actually changes the way I view the world. It means that I'm gonna see certain things and not see others. And this also relates to the auditory system. I'm gonna hear certain things and not hear others. The things that verify my beliefs I'm gonna feel rewarded for. The things that are counter to my beliefs, I'm not gonna be as rewarded for. So we have all these barricades to empathy and to really listening and to really hearing what the other side is trying to say. And we have all these support networks in our body and our brain, which are building a bigger and bigger divide. Now that's all very depressing. So the question is, what's the boat that's gonna get us across that divide? And I believe, and I'm not just defaulting to this because it's what my lab works on, but I fundamentally believe that the boat that's gonna get us to the other side is our ability to control our internal state, to be able to ratchet down our level of autonomic arousal just enough so that I can dilate not just my vision of what's happening in my immediate environment, but I can dilate my cognition, my thinking, to the possibility that there may be a kernel of value in what somebody else is saying, even if it's about me and I don't like what I'm hearing. Now, as somebody who spent time in the addiction treatment community, you probably know this is a lot of what you get good at as you learn to move through something that to you feels very good. And you know all the reasons why it would probably be good to change it, but you know what? You don't want to because it feels so good. So we're talking about an addiction to entrenched thinking. We're talking about an addiction and neurochemical systems that support lack of change, my refusal to change, and stubbornness. And I actually think, just like for the treatment of addiction and trauma, the key is to get people to learn to tolerate progressively higher levels of stress and maintain dilation of sensory experience, of thought experience. We've got to create some small little portals through which information can come in. A lot's been made of mirror neurons. I hate to break it to the crowd, but the data in support of mirror neurons in humans is not that impressive. And now the mirror neuron people are going to come after me, but fine. There are circuits in the brain that control emotional contagion, and those are what's powerful. My ability to recruit you into stress is much more powerful than my ability to recruit you into empathy for something good. That's a well-established neurobiological fact.
Or empathy for someone's perspective that I'm fundamentally going to disagree with.
Right. So I think there are three gates to getting there. And by there, I think I'm referring vaguely to the idea that we need to increase our level of understanding, at least our level of discourse, so that we can really hear other people's ideas, even though we don't like the way it feels and we love the way that we feel. This is what that result said. We love the way we feel. We don't like the way other people feel. The first thing is to bring the level of urgency that we feel internally down. We need to learn to calm ourselves in order to really have the information start to come in. Now, the system right now and people out there, everyone's in a frenzy. And you can see it, the collective conscience is kind of losing its mind. It's kind of out of its mind. We need to learn how to turn off those amygdala circuits. So are we all going to get together and do EMDR? Probably not. Are we all going to get together and do breathing exercises? Probably not at scale. What we need to do is start to figure out how we can, I think, especially for the next generation of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system so that they recognize that pulse of adrenaline as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups. The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture. I think it really does start with our own individual ability to do that. And so, David's a really good example, for instance, of somebody who learned how to deal with his own internal mess and build something beautiful out of that. And he continues to do that. And everyone's got to find that process for themselves. And whether or not you have a perfect family or whether or not you consider yourself the most inclusive and accepting person in the world or not, everyone needs to learn how to do that for themselves. And everyone thinks we do it pretty well, but I think it's clear that none of us do it well enough. So autonomic arousal, autonomic control, I think those are the entry points for addiction, for trauma, and for really empathic hearing and listening. And until we do that, I think our species is going to continue to go around this merry-go-round, where every 50 or 100 years we crash right up against the same general set of issues, only now social media has made it a lot more complicated.